Troy was 17, tall, quiet, and the kind of kid who knew how to stay out of trouble. He lived with his mom on the east side, walked the same 2-mile route to school every day, and never left his house without tying his laces tight and texting her where he was headed. He was the kind of son who didn't ask for much, except maybe new shoes, once a year, if he was lucky. That Saturday wasn't about anything big, just a stop at the mall. His friend Jalen's dad had offered to take them, said it was no problem. Troy didn't hesitate. He folded up a list in his pocket. Size 11, black and red, on sale. His mom had worked a double shift to give him the money. It wasn't about fashion. It was about showing up for senior pictures with something clean, something earned. He didn't expect attention. He wasn't looking to be noticed. But when he stepped through those automatic doors, something else was already in motion. Quiet, invisible, unnoticed by him. There was no warning, no sharp sound or sudden movement. Just air conditioning, the buzz of checkout scanners, and a teenage boy deciding between high tops and low tops, while eyes he didn't know were already watching. They entered like any other shoppers. No fanfare, just a quiet shuffle of sneakers against tile and the soft beeping of cash registers. Troy stayed close to Jalen and Mr. Blake. The store was busy, music low, aisles tight. Jalen headed straight for the sneaker wall. Mr. Blake asked an employee about sizes. Troy lingered, hands in pockets, near a display shelf stacked with show boxes. He wasn't in a rush. He'd already made up his mind about the pair he wanted. The moment didn't come with alarms. No yelling, just a subtle shift. A glance exchanged behind the counter. A whispered word passed between two employees. Then, eyes locked on Troy. Not Jalen, not Mr. Blake, who carried the shopping bag, but Troy. One of them walked away. Seconds later, another returned with someone else. He wore a badge clipped to his belt. Security. No smile. No greeting. Just a firm voice. You need to come with me. Troy blinked. Looked behind him. Confused. There was no explanation. No question. Just motion, directed at him, and him alone. He looked at Mr. Blake. Waited for him to say something. But the man's face was unreadable. He just adjusted his sleeves and took a small step back, as if separating himself. Troy didn't resist. He had nothing to hide. He followed. Behind them, Jalen stood frozen, one shoe still unlaced. The hallway behind the store was narrow. The door they entered had no signage, just a keypad and a buzz. When it clicked shut behind him, the noise of the mall vanished. The room was small. Fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly. A plastic chair. A metal table. No window. No clock. No explanation. Troy sat down slowly, unsure if he was even allowed to stand. The door closed behind him with a click that echoed louder than anything else in that moment. He didn't ask questions. Didn't speak. He knew better. You don't raise your voice. You don't make sudden moves. You wait. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. He checked his phone. No signal. Tried again. Nothing. He opened his messages, typed one to his mother, then deleted it. What would he even say? Footsteps outside. They didn't stop at the door. They kept walking. The silence got heavier with every second. Every creak of the chair. Every breath. The kind of quiet that starts pressing on your chest. Not because of what's being said, but because of what hasn't. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Troy kept thinking, what exactly did they think I did? No one had told him. No one had asked him anything. Just let him hear and left him. As if waiting long enough might make guilt show up on its own. He looked down at his hands. They were still, resting on his knees. The same hands that held his mother's bags after work. The same hands that filled out college applications 2 nights earlier. These were not the hands of a thief. But in that room, those truths didn't seem to matter. Outside, life went on. Sales continued. Customers moved from store to store. Somewhere, Jalen was still out there. And Mr. Blake, nowhere to be seen. Troy sat there. 15, 20 minutes. No one came in. No one explained. And still, no one called his mother. A knock came, not sharp, not urgent. Just 2 taps, and then the door opened. A man stepped in, holding something in his hand. A wallet. He didn't offer an apology. Didn't meet Troy's eyes. Just said 4 words, "You can go now." No mention of how long it had been. No acknowledgement of the silence. No admission that something had gone wrong. Troy stood slowly. He didn't speak either. What was there to say? He walked past the man without looking back, re-entering a hallway that somehow felt different now. Narrower, colder. Outside, the noise returned. The mall was alive. Laughter. Footsteps. Music overhead. But inside Troy, something had gone quiet. Jalen waited near the fountain, his shoulders tense. Mr. Blake stood farther off, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact. Neither of them said much. Jalen opened his mouth once, but closed it just as quickly. Mr. Blake glanced at his watch. The sneakers Troy came to buy, still inside the store, but he didn't want them anymore. The moment was gone. The reason for being there, ruined. He walked ahead, hands empty. Not because he couldn't afford something, but because no price could fix what had been taken. The car ride home was silent. No music. No small talk. Mr. Blake drove with one hand on the wheel, eyes locked on the road. Jalen sat in the back with Troy, staring out the opposite window. Troy leaned his head against the glass. The sun was still up, but it felt later than it was. The light didn't feel the same. His phone buzzed. A message from one of the guys. "When you coming through?" Another. "You forget your party." He didn't reply. When they pulled up to his house, Mr. Blake gave a quick nod and said, "Take care." Then he drove off. No explanation. No mention of what happened. Troy stepped inside. The house smelled like his mother's cooking. Something warm, probably sweet. But his appetite was gone. His mom turned from the stove and smiled at first. "How'd it go?" she asked. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. He didn't tell her everything, just that he changed his mind. Didn't find the right pair. She looked at him for a long second, as if she knew there was more. But she didn't push. Upstairs, he sat on the edge of his bed. His birthday banner still hung across the wall. A single balloon swayed from the ceiling fan. He opened his messages again. Typed. Erased. Locked the phone. Outside, voices carried from a neighbor's yard. Laughter, maybe music. Inside, the quiet stayed. Monday came, like it always does. Alarm clock. Bus stop. Backpack over one shoulder. But everything felt heavier. The hallway noise felt louder than usual. Lockers slamming. Sneakers squeaking on tile. Laughter from kids who didn't know, or didn't care. Someone nudged his arm near the stairwell. "Heard you got back to the mall." They smirked. He didn't respond, just kept walking. Another whispered it behind a cupped hand. A different voice added something else. Bits and pieces passed from ear to ear, twisted at every stop. Jalen wasn't in first period. Troy noticed, but didn't ask. His teacher asked if everything was okay. Troy nodded, but didn't look up. His notebook stayed open, the page untouched. Later, in the art room, he drew without thinking. A door with no knob. A boy on the other side, staring at it. Lunch was quieter than usual. The usual table had space, but he chose the corner by the vending machine instead. No one questioned it. By the end of the day, his name had changed in some people's mouths. They didn't say Troy from the team or Troy with the clean jumper. Just that kid from the mall. He went home, closed the door behind him, dropped his bag on the floor, sat on the edge of his bed. That's when it hit him. The story had already been told, and he hadn't spoken a word of it. Later that night, the room was dim, just the glow of a single desk lamp. Troy sat with his notebook closed, the drawing tucked beneath it. His phone vibrated once. A name lit the screen. Eli, Big Bro. They hadn't spoken in weeks. College kept Eli busy. But tonight, Troy answered. "You good?" Eli asked. Not loud, just there. There was a long pause. Then a quiet. "I didn't do anything, but they made me feel like I did." Eli didn't interrupt. He let the silence sit. Then finally said, "They'll try to make you carry things that don't belong to you. That's their weight, not yours." Troy didn't respond right away, but he listened. Every word, every space between them. He glanced over at the sneakers by the closet, still in the box, still unused. Eli kept talking about how moments like this leave a mark, but don't define you. About how strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just staying. They stayed on the call for an hour. Not always talking, sometimes just breathing on either end of the line. Before hanging up, Eli said one last thing. You can't change how they see you, but you can decide who you are when they are wrong. Troy ended the call, sat still, then opened his phone and typed. To Jalen, "You didn't say anything that day, and maybe you didn't know what to say, but silence says something too." He hit send. The message had been sent. No typing bubbles. No reply. Just a screen that stayed still. The next day, between classes, Jalen found him. Not in front of a crowd. Not surrounded by noise. Just near the vending machines where Troy usually sat alone. He stood for a moment, holding his breath like the words might vanish if spoken too fast. "I should have said something," Jalen said quietly. "I didn't know what to do. But that's not an excuse." Troy didn't move, didn't nod, just listened. Then Jalen added, almost in a whisper, "I'm sorry." And this time, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It landed. Troy gave the slightest nod, just enough to let it register. It didn't undo what happened, but it mattered. That afternoon, he pulled out the box from under his bed, opened the lid, held the shoes in his hands for a long minute. He didn't put them on right away. He sat with them, not because he forgot the story behind them, but because he finally chose what it would mean. The next morning, he wore them to school, not to show off, not for compliments, but because they no longer belonged to Faye. As he walked through the halls, something shifted, not in the hallway, but in him. No one said much. A few nods, a couple glances, but that wasn't the point. He walked taller, not because the past disappeared, but because he was done shrinking in its shadow. Weeks passed. The chatter faded. The hallway whispers turned back to test scores and basketball tryouts. But for Troy, something remained. Not bitterness, not anger, just clarity. He'd stopped waiting for an apology from the star. He wasn't expecting them all to call. The world hadn't changed, but he had. In English class, a writing assignment came. Tell a moment that shaped you. Most students sighed, unsure what to say. Troy didn't flinch. He wrote about a room without windows, about being watched but not heard, about shoes he almost didn't wear. He didn't name names. He didn't point fingers. He told the truth as it lived in him, quiet but unmoving. His teacher called it brave. He didn't feel that way. He just knew pretending it never happened wasn't strength. Facing it was. One afternoon, he pinned a small note inside his locker. What they see doesn't decide who I am. No bold colors, just black ink on lined paper. A few days later, someone else posted their own words. Then another. A ripple started not by shouting, but by standing still. This story isn't rare. What happened to Troy happens to teens across the country, silently, daily. Judged before being known, blamed before being asked, watched more than welcomed. Troy didn't shout. He didn't post a thread. He chose to move forward, carrying truth instead of shame. So if you've ever been treated like a problem, when all you were was a kid, this story is yours too. And if you stood by when you could have said something, next time, speak. We all have a choice, to be silent or to stand. At Kingdom Teen Stories, we share moments like this because teens deserve to be heard, not just judged. So if this story moved you, like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Kingdom Teen Stories for more stories that speak the truth.